Washington Post's Jennifer Rubin was on with Joy Reid. There's a meeting of the minds.
Boy.
She's very concerned that more Republicans are going to die as a result of the spread of the coronavirus than Democrats.
There is a particular cruelty, irony, that it is their core viewers, the Republican older viewers, as Eric said, who are the most at risk. And when you think about it, which party immediately canceled all of their rallies? Which party immediately started having their political figures really portray and use their lives as an example? It was the Democrats. So there are going to be, I hate to put it in these terms, there are going to be less Democrat deaths because there will be less mass gatherings. There will be less opportunities for people to congregate and share this horrible disease.
Mm-hmm. And she's really broken up about it, too. She's really distressed by having to put it in those terms, Republican versus Democrat. So we'll keep an eye on Jennifer Rubin's running tally of how many Republicans versus Democrats get hospitalized or die, because that's, making this a post-partisan issue about humanity and not about cheap partisan politics. Of course, by contrast, hear from our Surgeon General at the briefing on Saturday, Dr. Jerome Adams, his message to the media, people like, Jennifer Rubin.
Straight talk from the nation's doctor. We really need you all to lean into and prioritize the health and safety of the American people. No more bickering, no more partisanship, no more criticism or finger pointing. There'll be plenty of time for that. But we all need to hit the reset button and lean into moving forward the health and safety of the American people as our top priority. More stories on how people can protect themselves. More people on how people can get the resources that they need that we've unleashed from the federal government and state and local governments. Less stories looking at what happened in the past. Again, there'll be time for that.
And to that, Jennifer Rubin and Joy Reid and Jim Acosta and the whole gang of 500 inside the Beltway said, no, we don't want to. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Roger Kimball. He's the editor of The New Criterion and contributor to amgreatness.com, among other outlets. Roger, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Are you as concerned that more Republicans may die from coronavirus than Democrats? Is that something we should be keeping track of?
I think Jennifer Rubin should be keeping track of that. Jennifer Rubin is the kind of person who makes the idea of having a little keychain that will play the theme from the Twilight Zone where you press a button. A great novelty idea. It's ridiculous. The most important thing that has been done so far to slow the spread of this latest Chinese import was the president's decision at the end of January, while the Democrats were busy with their little impeachment melodrama, the president's decision to ban flights from China.
Yep.
That, as Tom Cotton said, that was the single most effective thing that he could have done. And if you look at the charts, you will about the new infections, the number of deaths, percentage of cases per total population, you will see that the United States' numbers are the lowest. Why? Because of this action and because of the common sense actions that people are taking. Of course, whenever you have this kind of event, the invitation to panic is very strong, and I think we've also seen that. We've seen a lot of overreaction. Everybody has turned into an expert epidemiologist, and the misinformation and the exploitation of this crisis by power-hungry politicians has been pretty extraordinary. I mean, the most extreme case that I've seen so far comes from Champaign, Illinois.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's close to you guys, but
yeah.
But the city council voted, extraordinary powers to the mayor to ban everything, to seize private property, to close bars. I mean, it was quite. I think they've taken a step or two back from their original plan, but you can see in their original idea that the whole idea was to make to give essentially totalitarian powers to these politicians, and it's a temptation that we really should be ready to resist.
Why is nobody talking about what's going on in Pennsylvania? The governor there is shutting down golf courses, hair and nail salons, and liquor stores. Liquor stores are closing on Tuesday. And listen to this. People in Pennsylvania are freaking out.
The last thing I want to be when the end of the world comes is sober. So.
Yes.
Last thing I want when the end of the world comes is to be sober. I mean, that is such an overreach.
Yeah.
And that will create civil unrest if they try that in Chicago. I mean, they have to keep the grocery stores open, the banks open, and the pharmacies, don't you think?
Yeah.
And the liquor stores.
Absolutely. Not in reverse order, maybe. But a friend of mine who's a golfer said that his golf club recently closed the driving range, which is of course ridiculous because there you are, you're feet apart from one another. You're not going to get the Wuhan flu from hitting a golf ball. It reminds me of, there's a famous book by a guy called Charles Mackay, written in the 19th century, I believe, called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And it's all about things like, financial panics and bubbles and tulipomania, in Holland in the 17th century, a single tulip bulb could go for the price of a house. How do these panics happen? Well, now we have another one. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be careful. You should wash your hands, take precautions. I think the great English classicist Benjamin Jowett once said that precautions are always blamed because when they're successful, they're deemed to have been unnecessary. Again, I think we should take precautions, but we should not panic. And I see a lot of panic around.
Oh, so much.
I wanted to get your reaction to the relief bill that moved out of Congress and to the president's desk on Friday, and whether or not this was an overreaction that you can actually measure. For example, the Wall Street Journal opined that extending jobless benefits for 26 weeks for a total of 52 in states where unemployment increases by more than 10%. Well, if the epidemic ebbs sooner, then extended jobless benefits could actually discourage unemployed workers from seeking work and delay economic recovery, which is what happened in the 2008-2009 recession when jobless benefits were extended arbitrarily. So there's a reason why 40 Republicans voted against this, and part of it is because they didn't have time to read the bill, and the other part of it is because there's a lot of feel-good, sentimental components to this that are not necessarily economically judicious.
Yes, no, I agree with what you just said. I think that I'm an avid supporter of the president, but if there's one area in which I disagree with his instincts, it's in spending money. We have a $23 trillion federal debt, and that's a number so large it's incomprehensible. But it's out there, and I think that Donald Trump is a curious combination of things. And one element in his political makeup is that he said he never wanted to touch entitlements, and he is not afraid of spending lots and lots of money. In my opinion, this bill is not really all that well crafted, and your example of the jobless benefits is one good example. We want to be fiscally responsible, and I'm not sure that this bill fits that definition.
One of the other criticisms coming from the states, particularly states that are run by Democrats like Illinois, in the direction of the Trump administration is, the lack of engagement to provide guidelines, to provide guidance, to suggest what states and localities should or should not be doing. I
don't think that's the federal government's role.
Well, that's where I was going.
I think that here is another good example of the truths that we should embrace, namely that we should seek to vest power in the local most authority, beginning with ourselves. That's what autonomous means. It means we give the law to ourselves. obviously no individual can do everything for himself. So then we have family, we have our neighborhoods, our local communities. But the idea that some bureaucrat or some battalion or division of bureaucrats in Washington knows how to handle things in Montana is ridiculous. And the rules and regulations that might be appropriate in, let's say, Washington, D.C. or New York City might be totally inappropriate in Montana or Idaho or Chicago or Effingham, Illinois, or wherever. And I think that this bureaucratic imperative to impose a cookie cutter on one-size-fits-all mentality is profoundly misguided.
Well, I mean, it is interesting to note, right? For example, I don't hear anybody criticizing, the elected officials in Jackson, Mississippi, for not declaring a state emergency, not shutting down bars and restaurants, and so on and so forth. So you're having different reactions around the nation, as you say, based on our sort of federalist subsidiarity model. And but all the criticism is directed at the Trump administration, and at the same time, these polls say, "Well, we're not playing politics with it. We're trying to get beyond politics." No, they're not.
They're
No, they're not. They're
nothing
trying to
but
get right
playing
in the
politics.
center. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when President Trump instituted his ban of flights from China, he was instantly denounced as being racist and xenophobic by Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and the rest of that clown car. But of course, as we were saying at the beginning of this segment, that was a very effective thing that he did. And they're trying to weaponize this virus and use it as a political bludgeon with which to beat their opponents. And it's too bad. You had a little clip from the Surgeon General, I think, at the beginning of the segment, which I thought was a very uplifting plea. Yes, we should put partisanship behind us, but that's the last thing that the Democrats are willing to do, unfortunately.
He is Roger Kimball, editor of The New Criterion and contributor to Am Greatness and other outlets. Roger, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.